In today's world of high-tech aircraft, where an F-15 has a radar which is so accurate that it can count the number of compressor blades on an enemy power plant over 100 miles away, or in the case of an FA-18 which can change from a fighter to an attack aircraft with the flick of a switch, or even the Tornado that can fire an awesome weapons load, it's easy to think that these aircraft just appeared on drawing boards and next on the runway. In fact, you'll find parts of aircraft types long since gone in each and every new high-tech fighter that magically appears on the runways and in the skies throughout the world. Every so often at air shows in many countries of the world, a familiar shape blazes across the sky. The shape is long like a pencil with a triangular wing. The aircraft is France's most successful warplane. Exported in large numbers and playing its part in a number of wars, the Dassault Mirage III is indeed quite a Defiant Delta. Like many tales of success, the Mirage III story began in obscurity. Its first chapter being one of a quest to produce a small light fighter, capable of carrying all-weather armament to an altitude of 60,000 feet in a maximum of 6 minutes. This was a daunting task in itself, considering that the only aircraft in the early 1950s able to achieve this were aircraft with rockets attached to them. Avion's Marcel Dassault responded to the quest with a small aircraft named the MD-550 Mystère Delta, a variant of the Dassault Mystère. In 1955, this stubby little Delta was renamed the Mirage I. It was a failure. It was just too small to be a practical fighter in the European environment. The next variant was a somewhat larger version of the Mirage I and was designated the Mirage II, and yes, it failed too. The Mirage II still had 2 engines, yet still couldn't meet the Mach 2 requirement. This variant was never translated into metal before being discarded. Mach 2 was the aim because designers all over the world recognized that any company that could produce a good Mach 2 fighter would have a good sales market for many years, simply because the temperature tolerance of aluminium alloys were restricted to that speed plateau. Any faster, and the skin of the aircraft would be adversely affected. Stepping stones towards this goal had been the North American Sabre and the F-100 Super Sabre in the West, and the MiG-15, and then the MiG-19 from the communist bloc. All these aircraft, together with Dassault's Super Mystère, had thin, swept wings and afterburners, and all reached maximum speeds from Mach 1.1 to Mach 1.3. With Marcel Dassault's third attempt at designing the aircraft, all necessary components came together to create the Mirage III. Snecma of France was now producing advanced aircraft engines and had released the Attar reheated turbojet. Dassault had radically changed the fuselage shape to conform with the newly discovered area rule aerodynamics. By this stage, the Mirage III was looking very similar to the British-built Ferry Delta II, but that's where the similarity ended. First flown in November 1956, it was seen to be a winner from that day forward. Although the Mirage was primarily designed as an interceptor, it quickly evolved into a multi-role aircraft, equally at home undertaking ground attack or reconnaissance missions. Above all, it was intended to be an aircraft that was simple both to fly and to maintain. No better proof of Dassault's achievement of this aim is needed than the record of the Israeli Mirage 3Cs during the Six-Day War of 1967. In the opening stages of the conflict, these aircraft flew no less than 12 sorties per day, and the usual turnaround interval was reduced from 20 minutes to a mere 7. On the receiving end, Egypt, Jordan and Syria were convinced from the incredible tempo of assault taking place that the United States or the United Kingdom must have been lending aircraft to the Israelis. The most remarkable point of the Mirage III program was that it was a minimum risk project, relying solely upon materials and manufacturing techniques already available in Europe in the late 1950s. Of all metal construction, the Mirage III's fuselage is produced in 7 sections, each of which is built in halves to ease manufacture. The cockpit, with its Martin Baker ejection seat, is compact, but has a logical layout of instruments and controls. These are all miniaturized, except the main flight panel and radar screen. These now appear dated, but 30 years ago were a very sophisticated design. The Mirage III uses an automatic navigation system, capable of holding up to 12 positions at the same time. The radar installed in the nose of the aircraft is primarily an airborne interception unit, without the look-down, shoot-down facility of more modern equipment. The Serrano 2 has additional navigation modes, which include ground mapping, height warning, where all obstacles above a predetermined specific height are displayed to the pilot, and oblique measurement of a ground point. One reason for the adoption of a delta wing for the Mirage III was the requirement for supersonic speed. This in turn meant that the wing needed to be thin, but Marcel Dassault did not want to resort to what was at the time considered to be complex manufacturing practices of using stressed skins covering integral stiffeners. The Mirage III's tricycle landing gear featured disc brakes assisted by a drag chute. This enables the Mirage to operate from a semi-prepared strip if necessary. It's been said that as a Mirage taxis towards you, it looks like a lady tiptoeing along holding her dress up out of the puddles. Simplicity combined with reliability are the themes taken up by Snecma in the manufacturer of the Attar turbojet, which evolved from a German-designed engine developed late in World War II. Pairs of external drop tanks of 600, 1300 or 1700 litres can be carried on the wing pylons to extend range for a mission. But let's go back to the roles which the Mirage III plays in air forces around the world. There's little doubt that the tailless Delta has considerable merit in its original role as an interceptor. But it's debatable how effective this configuration is for ground attack or for air superiority duties where dogfighting is employed. During the Arab-Israeli wars of 1967 and 73, Israeli-flown Mirages clearly outclassed Arab-flown MiGs, and this had the effects of boosting sales for Dassault. However, Mirage III pilots freely admit that the Delta is not the best platform for sustained turn performance, which is of vital importance in air superiority missions. Along with many other countries, Australia was no exception to sing the praises of the French design. The Australian Avon Sabre was a very capable fighter, but was essentially a subsonic aircraft. No match for supersonic aircraft being produced by the end of the 1950s. Several aircraft were being considered to replace the Sabres, with Lockheed's F-104G Starfighter being favoured by many, along with Northrop's F-5, the English Electric Lightning and the McDonnell F-4 Phantom. But the late starter, the Dassault Mirage III, was eventually chosen because of its ease of maneuverability and control, its simplicity of design, and its compatibility with the aircraft and weapons of Australia's allies. In December of 1960, the Australian government made the decision that the RAAF would receive 30 Mirage 3s into service. And in March 1961, the order was increased to 60 aircraft. But in true government form, the decision was again altered, the order being up to 100 aircraft. And yet, a further increase was announced in 1963. This time, the extra 10 aircraft were dual-seat Mirages. At the end of the decade, another 6 aircraft were ordered, making it a grand total of 110. Well, now the number was established. Which production facility would build them under license? CAC or GAF? The bun fight went on for more than a year, with ultimately the government aircraft factory becoming prime contractor, and Commonwealth Aircraft Corporation begrudgingly taking up the subcontracting role responsible for the wings, fin, rudder, tail cone and ATAR engine. At this time, the designation for the Australian-built Mirage was established as A3 by the RAAF. The next delay in the project revolved around that dirty word, metrification. The French had used the metric system of measurement when designing the Mirage 3. And because Australia did not use that system at the time, a complete specification change to imperial measurements was called for. The Australian version also had some 178 engineering changes incorporated into its manufacture. The first 2 Australian Mirages were manufactured wholly in France. Tragically, aircraft number A31 crashed only 10 months after it was delivered. The aircraft was under the charge of ARDU at the time and was lost during a spin recovery trial. The A32 aircraft is easily recognized. It also spent its lifetime at Aircraft Research and Development Unit. Apart from its bright colour scheme, it's been modified for many and varied tests over the years, and its nose cone has been modified to carry 3 cameras, one pointing backwards from each side, and one pointing backwards from underneath. It can also carry cameras on the centre line, or on the outer missile rails, or in modified supersonic tanks. These cameras allow detailed studies of tests undertaken, tests of separation of various weapons from the aircraft, under many conditions. They record the accuracy when firing at targets from various heights, speeds, and angles of attack. The safety aspects of each flight test are also recorded for post-test investigation. ARDU also had dual-seat Australian-built Mirages, A3112 and A367. These serve to predetermine any problems which may develop in surface aircraft. Ongoing investigations using strain gauges to detect fatigue stresses, as they may originate, were carried out, as well as exacting flights undertaken at various intervals in the aircraft type's life, to determine up-to-date flight performance data, taking into account how the aircraft had been affected by time and flying use. Basically, Australia had 2 types of Mirage. The first 50 aircraft were Mirage IIIO, which is the interceptor version. The second type of Mirage was the 30A version, which has the modifications suiting it to ground attack and fighter missions as well. In 1969, the existing Australian 30F aircraft were modified to the A version and were redesignated Mirage 30FA, with the exception of A32, which escaped this modification because it was delivered directly to ARDU on its arrival from France and remained there throughout its service life. Between 1965 and 1988, 5 RAAF squadrons flew Mirages, and during their service life, a total of 40 aircraft were lost and 14 pilots were killed. And the press latched onto each crash, making it into a major media event, splattered with comments like, "Australia's Mirages have run out of time," and "Pilots are scared of flying the Mirage," and "All our Mirages are grounded." As is usual, the truth was somewhat less dramatic than the exaggerated stories told by the popular press. But nevertheless, there were problems. Compared with other countries, which use their Mirages for 1 or 2 sorties a day, the Australian squadrons were flying their aircraft on 3 to 4 sorties daily. As the aircraft had a nominal fatigue life of 3,000 flight hours, it could rightly be said that the RAAF aircraft were running out of hours. That should have posed no serious problems, though, because the Mirages were due to be replaced no later than 1979, but in fact remained in full squadron service until the FA-18 Hornet filtered into service, beginning in 1986. A great percentage of the hours flown in the Australian Mirages were during low-level sorties, and this low altitude factor speeds up fatigue rates in many craft. A combination of the extended life and the aircraft's hard and heavy utilization naturally led to early fatigue problems, although not beginning to cause real problems until about the time when the RAAF had intentions of replacing their Mirages. Consequently, a wing refurbishment program was implemented, and at the same time, avionics were updated, engines brought up to the latest standards, and a 00 Martin Baker Mark 4B ejection seat was fitted to each aircraft. The Mirage accident reports show us that engine failure and undercarriage warnings, situations where pilots were advised to eject from their stricken aircraft, were responsible for about half of the aircraft losses, as a Mirage with no engine power is said to have a glide ratio comparable with a brick. However, the Mirage was considered to be very much a pilot's aircraft by the pilots themselves, and one memorable occasion during the 1970s must still bring a smile to former RAAF Mirage pilots' lips. It was during a dissimilar air combat training exercise using US Navy pilots in Grumman F-14 Tomcats as the enemy. Now keep in mind, F-14s are reputed to be the best dogfighters in the world. Well, the result? A massacre by the RAAF's Mirages, with positive proof provided by their gun cameras. And it must be remembered that the Australian pilots weren't specialist air-to-air combatants, as this role was shared equally with training for air-to-ground duties. A remarkable result repeated almost a decade later when experienced Mirage pilots waxed less experienced RAAF FA-18 pilots in similar training exercises. It just proves how important it is for a pilot to know just what he and his aircraft can achieve together, as there's little comparison between the aircraft themselves. The Hornet is over 10 feet wider and nearly 7 feet longer than the Mirage, although the wing area is relatively similar. The Hornet can carry more than twice the maximum external load and can carry 7,711 kilograms of weapons, compared with the Mirage's maximum 4,000 kilogram weapons load. The Mirage is a faster aircraft with a higher service ceiling than the Hornet, and its combat radius is 745 miles, compared with the Hornet's 460 miles. But the Mirage needs a runway longer than 5,000 feet, compared with just 1,400 feet for the Hornet. But now, all former RAAF Mirage pilots must wear the title of X, whether they like it that way or not. We spoke with Scott Goodyear before the Mirage fleet was mothballed. Scott, what's been your experience with a Mirage aircraft?
enjoyable. I guess that's the first thing I could say. I've probably got about 950, 960 hours on it now, and I've thoroughly enjoyed every moment of flying it. The aircraft is certainly getting old. I'm sure many people have told you that in the past. It's over 20 years old now, and in relation to newer aircraft, it's certainly, well, it is older. You can just to look at the aircraft, you can see that. To fly, and it's probably in that respect, it's more of an aircraft to fly. The newer aircraft are far more systems orientated. A lot of the newer aircraft are fly-by-wire, where the aircraft isn't. This particular aircraft isn't. And therefore, you seem to, well, I find anyway, and having done a little time on flying fly-by-wire aircraft, that you get more of a feel for this aircraft, and it's more of a pilot's aircraft in that respect. Operational capability-wise, it certainly hasn't got the capability of our newer aircraft like the Hornet, but I still think that it's a firm favourite with many pilots who have flown it.
What peculiarities has the Delta wing when flying the Mirage?
Well, the Delta wing is a very high wing loading, which I guess when you're doing low-level strikes or flying low-level in turbulence, it certainly provides for a more comfortable ride than the Hornet. I guess that's one of the advantages it's got over the Hornet, one of the few, I guess. But also, it doesn't have the turn capability of the newer aircraft, especially aircraft like the Hornet. Not only got a straighter wing, but they've got a lot of lift augmentation. The Mirage hasn't. It's got a pure Delta wing. It's very good in straight lines, but as soon as you start to turn it, it uses up a lot of airspace. So it's certainly at a disadvantage if you have to turn with another aircraft.
How do you like flying the Mirage?
Well, it's hard to say. I'm finding it very busy at the moment. I've only been with them 3 weeks. I finished my test pilot's course in the UK in December last year, and I've just started with RGU at the beginning of February of this year. So I'm still finding my feet a little bit, but I'm fairly busy. I've got a few projects already lined up, but in that 3 weeks I've sort of just been recently refreshed on the Mirage, and having done a test pilot's course, that when you climb into the aircraft and actually fly it, you view it in a different perspective, because you've flown a lot of different types on the test pilot school, including things like the Lightning and the Tornado. And the Lightning is another aircraft, not unlike the Mirage. It's sort of the same sort of vintage, and in many ways flies very much like the Mirage, whereas the Tornado, once again, is one of these high-tech aircraft. It's fly-by-wire, and it's the control... A new breed, yeah, well put.
There's something very sad about decommissioning an aircraft type. It brings a lump to the throat of public spectators to see a familiar silhouette in Australian skies fly in its last public flying demonstration, as it did in Laverton, October 1988. How must the ground crew who work daily with these aircraft feel when the last Mirages leave the airbase on a flight, never to return? And what about the pilots? What a loss to them. What thoughts and memories crowd their heads during their last flight in their familiar workmate? What was Scott thinking as he disembarked at Woomera, after ferrying each of the RGU Mirages to their desert resting place? Creating a show for the media must feel like an invasion of his private goodbyes. Even the tanker, instead of providing fuel, must drain the lifeblood from this aged but revered French lady. And how sad for the ground crew at Woomera. Instead of tending to her needs, they must now prepare her for internment. To put her to rest, but in a manner so that she may be revived at any time. Meanwhile, stripping her of her duties. Her cameras removed. Her usefulness denied her. And yet, her dignity remains. It is indeed, sadly, the end of an era.